Welcome to the Coast Podcast. I'm Emily, a virtual assistant agency owner who left Amazon in 2019 to build my dream.
And I'm Whitney, a freelance writer and communications consultant who never felt at home in a cube farm.
We wanted to learn from people who paved their own ways like we did. So we created this podcast to talk to others who are brave enough to pick a different path. Creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing their careers and their lives their way.
Join us as we make new friends, get inspired, and show you beautiful paths less traveled.
Not every road leads to the coast, but the ones that do come with a great view.
Hello and welcome back to the Coast. I'm Whitney Popa and I own a communications consultancy in Edmonds, Washington. Emily is on vacation, so today I have the pleasure of having Mo to myself, Margaret Smith, who who's the founder of I Love It When. You own it, you're the founder, you're all the things, and she's here to tell us more about what that means and what I Love It When is.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to hang out and get to know you more too.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So you want me to share a little bit about what being the founder of I Love It When means to me and what it is?
Yes.
Start there? Okay. That's a great question to begin with. Kind of a little bit about what we were talking about before you hit record was being able to kind of pave your own path and know that it's okay to do so. And that's, I think, a great way to start off by saying that I Love It When is my own creation. And it's part of what gets me so excited every day and brings me so much joy is that I actually get to pick what I want to do every single day. And that has been such a journey. And so I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant. I also run retreats and workshops for companies and for community members. And probably what brings me the deepest joy out of what I do is connecting with other humans on a soul level, because that's been something that I've done my whole life. And I didn't realize that I could actually make that my job or my career and how I live and survive in this world. And so I founded the company in July of 2020, right after COVID started. And I had just about enough money to get me through about a month and a half. And I've been going for almost 3 years now, and it's morphing and changing, and I'm just having a blast with the ride.
Congratulations on that too, because most
Thanks.
people quit after the first year. I mentioned that a lot on our podcast. And I remember early in my business having those moments of looking on Indeed and saying, I can always go back to a real job if I get too freaked out by this. And then I would read these job descriptions and think to myself, no fucking way.
Yes.
Click out of them
and
go back to trying to figure out my business or selling shit from the garage if I needed to. So
no, thank you for saying that, because I have to remind myself of that all the time. Like, okay, wow, I've made it 3 years. I can keep going. And I think one of the biggest hurdles is really actually just hanging on for the first couple of years and not stopping, not allowing yourself to get freaked out or be consumed by fear, because so much of society, like what's driven society, is fear-based leadership and people who just feed off of fear. And so that has been my biggest lesson, is really trusting and surrendering to what I know my heart wants, and which is completely opposite of what we've been taught.
Yes. And I was actually having this conversation yesterday about the limiting beliefs that we're born with. Even me, I went on all these paths of things that I should do without necessarily knowing that I was shoulding myself so much.
Yes.
And even all the things so it's funny because my grandfather always said, you could be whatever you want to be. And then my family also said, doctor, teacher, lawyer. And when I was in college, I considered all of those things until I declared my major in English and political science, thinking maybe I would become a lawyer. Then I didn't like any of the kids who were in my poli-sci classes. And I thought, the only reason I finished that degree was that I had already taken stats. So I thought, no more of this. I'll just figure it out. So I use mostly my English degree in my life now. You don't even necessarily need to use your degrees or go to college, I don't think anymore. But I went on these paths of real jobs in real life or what I thought they were. Devil Wears Prada really got way more embedded in my head than I thought it would. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have a corner office and I'm going to be fabulous and do all of these
Yes.
things that I was trained to do. And then I felt like I wanted to crawl out of my skin in every sexy, cool job that I had. Shout
Mm-hmm.
out TLC. And I'm curious for you, you started I Love It When in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that we have similar stories with what came before that, as far
Mm-hmm.
as things, jobs that you thought you should be doing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to say first, what you were sharing before about limiting beliefs, something came to mind. A mentor of mine, Enmei Mangles, told me at a retreat that she came to speak at once. She said, there's only two fears that we're born with, and it's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is a learned behavior. And I was like, mind blown.
Wow.
Okay. So when you talk about not shoulding your way through life, oh yeah, I was definitely a previous people pleaser and really wanted people to be happy, really wanted to make my family around me proud of me, really wanted to see other people have peace. And so, and I also just didn't know, like, what was I supposed to do? I think I usually share with people that I feel like I spent the first 30 years of my life allowing life to happen to me because I just didn't know what I wanted. I knew one thing I knew for sure was that I hadn't met anybody that I wanted to marry. And so as my friends started to get married and it was definitely shown to me that this is the path you're supposed to take, I was like, well, that's not for me. So I must have some other purpose. And so I got my master's degree in social work. And after that, through a connection with my mom, I got a job at the Seattle Art Museum. And I was there for about 5 years and I really enjoyed it. But I, as a single woman, didn't make hardly enough money to really have my own place, let alone purchase my own place. And so towards the end of my time there, I started to have panic attacks because I was, like you said, like crawling out of my skin, not liking what I was doing anymore, didn't want to deal with the politics. And so I started to almost black out in some of the meetings we were having. And that was when I said, okay, I don't know what I need to do, but I need to leave here. And then I just fell through another connection, kind of fell into the real estate industry. And I was there for 8 years. And the last 3, 4 years of that job, I would say, is when I really started to recognize, oh, I can run a small business. That's what I'm doing now. And I'm grateful to have learned that in the real estate world. I just wasn't sure how to do it or what exactly I wanted to do. And so all of that led up to when COVID happened and I started to work from home. It felt so good to be in my own energy. And I realized how much other people's energies were still affecting me. I was definitely coming out of my shell more and doing more on my own and definitely paving paths that other people weren't paving. But that COVID was kind of the final push for me to recognize that I was ready to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. One of my clients is made in Washington, and I write their maker stories, which are blogs and deep dives into various makers, people
Mm-hmm.
who are on small business owners, but they make physical things like candles,
Okay.
San Juan Island sea salt, Fran's chocolates. She's right across the street from the Seattle Art Museum.
Yeah.
They're all makers in big or small capacities that Made in Washington carries. They're basically an incubator for all these small businesses in Washington. And so many of them started their company in COVID because
Okay.
they were like, not this. All I know is
Mm-hmm.
not this. And
Yes.
I'm willing to entertain an idea of something else, especially one of the first ones that I wrote was a candle maker and a hot sauce maker. And they both launched their businesses from their kitchen during COVID because they decided this is fun and my friends and
Mm-hmm.
family love it. This is something I can actually do. So for
Mm-hmm.
you, how did you figure out not this, but maybe this? Did you start dabbling on the side? Was it just a full-on business launch of I'm going to offer my gifts to the world in this way? Or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would say I always share with people like I had probably been like slowly happening in those last 3 to 4 years, but I didn't have a business plan when I left. I knew that I was going to immediately offer coaching, but that wasn't what ended up filling. I mean, that's not what has filled up my business. Actually, that's not been the majority of what I'm doing. But I would say in the last couple of years before I left, I started running retreats in 2017, and I really loved not only the aspect of bringing all the people together, but the event itself and the magic that happens when people gather for an intention like that. I loved that. I had been coaching basically for free for years.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since when I joined the real estate world, I recognized there was a lack of leadership and there was a lack of management and training in general. And so all of these skills that I had built in previous jobs all of a sudden came to light. And so I started teaching in 2013. And so it was through teaching, doing retreats, and then my boss and I started a podcast. It was through that I really recognized, oh, like I could podcast all day. I could really interview people, talk to people. I love this. And so I think I was developing something that I didn't even realize was going to become what I'm doing today now full time. But I didn't have that plan in the back of my head. Just in front of me was, I really like this. Let me do more of this. And let me actually see what I can accomplish, see what I'm capable of. Because for those retreats that I did in the beginning for real estate admin, I brought in speakers like Susan Scott, like Gary John Bishop, people who usually cost anywhere between $20,000 to $40,000 to bring in for an event. And that really helped me to realize how much is possible when you're willing to go after it and just try things. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a similar experience I remember in college, one of my sorority sisters majored in nutrition, and she was always studying and stressed and hated her life. And I was majoring in things that I liked, even though I thought maybe I'll take these in different directions than I did. I did end up majoring in only things that I liked because why suffer?
Yes.
And I had that mentality early on, and I was very book smart too, so there was a lot that I could have done that didn't include suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But I really was brave enough early on to go after the things that I loved. And then I made that decision when I graduated, I'll just figure it out. I'll figure out how to monetize this. First, I went down the path created by others, and then I got brave enough, like you, under different circumstances, to go down my own path and create something for me, by me. And as it's evolved, I'm watching, kind of listening to you too, like watch my business slowly evolve, or kind of swiftly sometimes evolve with me and how I am. And the external versus internal validation, I've seen a lot of that in my business now. Of even just this past year, I create things out of my soul versus waiting for a client to show up and tell me, write this thing or do this for me. And all the energy exchange is X amount of dollars or whatever. Now it's more driven in I think this is a really good idea and I'm going to put it out there. That's brave. To start with the retreats is really brave, because you're asking people to buy into your idea and pursue this growth that a lot of people aren't willing to look at. I'm sure you surrounded yourself with people who were more interested, but also it tends to be a higher price point, because a retreat isn't going to be $100. It's going to be probably a couple thousand.
Yeah. It was always so fun and so interesting to see how, especially in real estate, and you say you're hosting a real estate admin retreat, people come thinking they're going to talk about databases and drip campaigns and everything, and they come and they're like, what is this? Because yes, we were all in operations, but for me, I was looking for next level growth. I was looking for leadership skills. I was looking for access to all the resources that real estate agents were getting access to, but a lot of real estate agents will not pay for training or coaching or any sort of the same resources for their admin, even though they often are asking their admin to run their business. And that just did not make sense to me. And so they would come, and the retreat was really about personal growth. And so there were tears, there was a lot of vulnerability, there was a lot of recognizing your power. And so it was not unusual for after that retreat to have someone's boss come up to me and say, what did you do to her? Because she's now speaking up. She's now actually speaking in our office, in our team meetings, and actually giving me feedback. Like, it's amazing. And how did you do that? And so I love that gray area of helping people realize the ROI of personal growth. You can't always measure it, but you can see the results if you allow it to happen and allow that space. And so is truly, and that's when I really began my journey of realizing I am meant to do something like this. This brings me so much joy.
I'm curious too, this is a little bit tangential. I've had experiences lately where people in my previous lives, I work so hard on all of these things and I feel my heart beating really fast because I'm so excited. I get so excited about personal growth and working hard to achieve my highest self and my highest levels, whatever that looks like in the moment. And I'm curious for you, if as you've been on this path, if you, let's say you haven't seen someone in a while who you used to be super
Mm-hmm.
close with. I had a few experiences lately where I'm faced with, wow, I've really been working hard and proud of myself. And then looking at them like, I'm so sad that you're not working on this. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's so much potential for you. It's not my journey. It's not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing that really stark contrast and realizing that the work that you've put in to get there, and not to say it in a negative way, it's just
Mm-hmm.
really interesting how you meet people on your path, and now navigating how I manage relationships where people
Mm-hmm.
aren't willing to look at those things and
Mm-hmm.
be better in whatever that looks like to them. I'm trying to be very kind in how I phrase that.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get it, and you're doing a good job. It's uh, one of the hardest things I've had to learn, because I remember thinking about this back in high school, is not everyone is supposed to go with me the whole way. And
Mm-hmm.
I love people so hard and so big, uh, that I remember asking my basketball coach back then, like, how do you say goodbye to people when the seniors graduate and they leave? How do you actually handle that? And so I have had to, I think part of what has added to my growth is my ability to let go. And it has been incredibly difficult because, yeah, I see people and I'm like, I realize I have now what I like to call like a zero tolerance policy for people who are not in growth mode. And even my partner,
Mm.
Tom, said when he first met me, he realized why so many other partners had like basically kind of run away or decided not to stay, because there are three things you need to have in order to be with me. And that is constant growth, vulnerability, and openness, I believe is what he says. And it's that constant growth that most people are not down for. And I'm not okay with that, because
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's almost a responsibility as humans to be. Now, constant growth doesn't mean you have to drive as hard as I do. However, when you have an awareness, you should integrate that into your life and not stuff it down and suppress it, because you're actually hurting the people around you the most when you do that. So it is, like you said, it's really interesting to see the contrast. And I've recognized that it doesn't mean we can't be friends like or acquaintances, but you're definitely not going to be a part of my inner circle if you're not like building that awareness and you're not driven to build that awareness, because
Mm-hmm.
that's really important to me as a value.
Yeah. Is that something you two, he came up with? The way you're talking about it makes it sound like he sat down one day and he said, okay, Mo, here's what I've identified as your values in relationship. Or did you say, we're dating, here's what I need from a partner?
He came up with that. So like in my business values are the same as my personal values, and it's education, intuition, love, and ethics. And when he said this to me, it was from observing me and recognizing like I was so different from other partners he had dated. He had always kind of allowed other people to choose him. He had never been active in the choosing, and he was actively choosing me. And he recognized, well, shit, if I'm doing this, I've got to recognize that I got to be on this path or she is going to leave me behind. And so
Mm-hmm.
he's the one that brought that up. And I was like, God, you're kind of right. Yeah.
It's
Because if you
amazing.
can't be vulnerable or open and you're not into growth, like, yeah, we're not going to be a match. And it doesn't, you know, I don't ever say to people like it doesn't mean that I don't think highly of you or that I don't love you. But it's pretty clear from when you spend time with me that that is my trajectory, and that's what's important to me.
Go,
Yeah.
Tom. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I just
Yeah.
love him. And the fact that he brought that up, like, what an
Oh my
evolved
gosh.
man.
He has blown my mind with realizing what I was missing out on before, just in
Mm-hmm.
terms of actually having a partner that's supportive and really intelligent and emotionally intelligent. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Hmm.
and it's so good to have that in your corner too, really
Oh my God. Yeah.
understanding your business and the value that it brings to
Oh
people,
yeah.
because like you said, it's pretty not quantifiable. And that's one of the things that many men,
Mhm.
in at least in my life, have get very fixated on, problem, solution, how do I measure it? What's my job? How
Yeah.
do we move on to the next thing? So to have a man who sees that level of nuance is pretty
Hmm.
incredible.
Oh yeah, I think the universe knew that I needed him for this journey, like that kind of a support.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
With
Yeah.
your business now, you said coaching isn't the primary financial driver. What does it, I'm sure it is all sorts of things, but what does it
Hmm.
look like as far as your current services and offers and
Mm-hmm.
how people work with you. Because I've been in a few rooms with you where it seems like you're pulled into panels and
Mm-hmm.
women's circles and really important collective things as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say so. Even though I thought coaching was going to be like my entire day, I thought I was going to have 10 to 15 clients. I've always had somewhere around 5 or 6. And so it is like what has kept me surviving. Like it is what has helped me financially the most over the last 3 years. But what I'll say is I recognize that I was being pulled into companies and teams for workshops around communication and vulnerability. And so it's been a mix of coaching, these workshops, and then speaking gigs for, yeah, like you said, women's circles or different groups. Or I'm getting asked to speak on a cruise in 2024, a Mexican Riviera cruise for a networking group. So really using my voice, I guess I would say, more so than just working on one-on-one. I seem to be getting pulled towards speaking in front of groups more and more, which makes sense to me too, because I always knew that that was my path. Even though I was an introvert and really not like someone that I thought would get up in front of thousands of people, I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that's also why I started the podcast, because it was just, I'm a big believer in, I don't have a 5 or 10 year plan. And when they used to ask us to create these plans in school or in real estate, I was like, I don't know why, but I have so much resistance to this. I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to recognize, and I love what Oprah says in so many of her videos, like you're just supposed to know the next step, just the next baby step. And so those baby steps seem to be leading me more and more to speaking in general. Yeah.
I think we're on super parallel paths, and there's so much that I can add to that of, I'm sure you've done your human design, but for mine, as a
I'm curious what yours is.
I'm a manifesting generator 2/4. And in my first paid speaking gig that I did earlier this year, I wanted to be in my own energy beforehand, and they wanted to try to force me to happy hour and mingle with strangers who I didn't know. And they
before the gig, before. Wow. Okay.
And they shamed me a little bit for it, acted like I was weird for not wanting to be with other people and have my energy muddied that way. And I realized after the fact that what I was meant to get out of that, and I know you are good at this as well, is and I want to get into the money stuff because you're very transparent about numbers, and I have a money club that's part of our intention in that as well as women, is I completely undercharged them. So I was already kind of resentful for that because I had no idea what to charge. And then when I was asked to do extras, so extras for me, as I had no wrangler and no green room, really. Like, I don't need to be a celebrity with my own special M&Ms. What I do need is for somebody to respect my boundaries and to greet me as if they were expecting me when I arrive, instead of being treated like I'm strange for not wanting to participate in a happy hour with people I don't know prior to going on stage to give a talk that I've prepared for months that I charged only $250 to do. Which is just like, there's so many things. But I found too, like, to your point, as an introvert, I love teaching. I love getting up and talking to people. And what I know from my human design is I am meant to come into the group, drop my knowledge, drop the mic, and leave. Or I can mingle after. I'm happy to answer questions and be with you, but not before. And that's okay. Tony Robbins doesn't do it. Gabby Bernstein doesn't do it. Can you tell that I've been on a track of learning?
I love that.
Am I the weird one? Am I weird at all? They're just doing their jobs, and they're very focused on building a beautiful event. I do believe they could do a better job of hosting their speakers. However, it was great learning for me all around. And just a note to anybody, anywhere, no matter where you are in your speaking journey, I think there are opportunities to undercharge and to do things for free if it feels right in your soul. For me, that particular thing should have been something that I charged way more for. I just didn't know what I was getting into.
Oh yeah. You don't know what you don't know. No, I love that you know that about yourself. So I'm a reflector in human design.
Oh, wow,
so very much before
hearing that from you. I think you
Yeah,
mentioned it on one of the panels because I was blown away.
it's been life-changing. It's like any other thing in personal growth when you learn one more thing about yourself that explains something that you could never verbalize before.
Yes.
So I totally understand what you mean. And it's interesting for people who may not understand what it's like to speak in front of a group, but when you're coming and you have something prepared, I can't imagine. I'm also not an extrovert, definitely not. And I'm bringing all of my energy for this
Yes.
experience. And so, very much so, I would want to come straight to the mic, like, or maybe have like a few minutes beforehand to meditate or something, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't be expected to mingle with other people until afterwards because my job, you've asked me to deliver this and I'm going to deliver this. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always going to be at my highest and best ability, which requires all of my energy. And the preparation that happens that morning or the day before, yeah, it's all part of that ritual.
Yeah.
So I love that you stood up for yourself and that, and also that experience of not knowing what to charge, totally been there and have been playing with that aspect for the last couple of years, which is something else that Tom has really helped me with because he used to be a lawyer. And so what men think about what they should charge as
Yes.
well is so different than how women think. It's
I
mind-boggling.
I heard something, and I have a couple friends who are business owners. We walk every week, and I remember mentioning it to them because one of them is she does a lot of talking in her industry as well. She's in the beauty industry. And I told them I don't remember if I learned it from a book or heard it on a podcast, but it was anytime you're debating what to charge, ask your girlfriends, hear them, or select few, try to not have too big of a circle because then it gets confusing and it's too many people inputting, and make sure to ask a man. Because like you said, men, when I told my stepfather that I charged $250, he was over at our house for dinner and food fell out of his mouth. He was like, "You mean, excuse me, like, did you leave off a zero there? Like, you should be charging at least $2,500 for something like that." And then I was like, I already feel bad about this. You can't shame me. Like, don't add that to this right now. I know that I undercharged.
Yeah.
I'm learning some lessons here. And
But how
thank
good
you.
to hear from him, like to hear what he would normally expect is really interesting.
Yeah. And he
Yeah.
owned a couple
Yeah.
companies and everything too. So, and it also shows them and the universe. I know you and I agree on all these things of the
Yeah.
energy going into this, of that energetic exchange. I was undervaluing myself and I went into it feeling undervalued, even though I didn't know any better when I signed the contract 10 months before. 10 months prior, Whitney was not the same person, but I couldn't go
Yeah.
back. And so I did what I could, learned, did a great job, and made some awesome connections. And now I know better for the future. And that level of nuance too is something that I'm sure you bring to people in your coaching and your retreats, of when we're beating ourselves up about something, for example, of, dang it, I'm mad at myself for this. Are you though? Like, I don't think I was mad at myself so much as frustrated that I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I had to come to that conclusion of forgiving myself and knowing that this is all, you can have things that exist at the same time, which when so many of us have been built to live in these worlds of binaries, it can be difficult to navigate that. And I see you as an amazing leader in those ways of helping people question their own stories.
Well, thank you. Yeah, coming from curiosity and always questioning what you've been told is some of the biggest lessons I think I've learned and that I've talked and shared with other people, because especially when it comes to money and value and where you learned those things, I am constantly going back to, where did I first hear that was the thing to do or the way you're supposed to think. And I think especially as women, we've just been taught for generations. I mean, we've women have come so far in terms of what we're capable of now and what we know we're capable of, but there's still so much work to be done. I see so many women undervalue their time and their energy, and that's like two of the most precious things you can give away.
Do you do any retreats, asking for myself, retreats or coaching specifically on money? Because that's something, as I was learning more and more about money and becoming more I don't want to say financially literate because I'm very good at math and numbers, but I had outsourced all of those decisions my whole life. It went from my dad to my parents to my husband, and a little bit of me in between, but very fearful in that in between of like, what can I afford? What can I do? What can't I do? And a whole lot of restriction. And now that I'm in this kind of blast off life place and questioning so many things and feeling very empowered in a lot of ways, I thought maybe other people would want to come on this journey with me. So I have this money club where we talk about that. And I remember at the Divine Pearl, whatever they called it thing, when you were on the panel and you straight up said, I made $75,000 in my last job or whatever. And like, you could, women don't say any numbers.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, in the back, like she said a number, and so many of us aren't willing to say any numbers at all. And I've had a friend who's a big expander for me, who right out of college was in sales and had big numbers to talk about. And all of my sorority sisters were like, they basically were saying she has too masculine of energy for us. She's the most feminine, beautiful thing. She like sleeps in fancy lingerie, goes out on runs in the smallest booty shorts, and very beautiful and feminine. And yet she's this badass businesswoman, and they could not handle it. And I was like, like, your beef with her is not my problem.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about why you find her saying, I'm making multiple six figures in this job so jarring. And the approach was not that weird. It was just their feelings around it. And I could feel myself feeling kind of nervous, like, oh, we don't have these conversations, but I loved it too. So now I've become more like her, where I'm like, okay, let's sit and talk about money.
I love that. No, you bring up so many good things. When I first started talking about it, I was going to all these real estate conferences, and I was a newbie in the world, like 2012, 2013, first 2 years in the business, just trying to learn everything. And every time I went to a panel, I was like, why won't people share how much they're making? Like, people were always asking, hey, what's your average salary for a real estate admin in the Pacific Northwest area? And nobody wanted to give a number. And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, when I die, I don't care who knows how much I made. Like, I know there's a level of privacy that everybody deserves to whatever extent that they want. And I think we've put so much weight on what you make is what your worth is, that people are afraid to share what they make because they think that makes them less valuable. That's where I see a lot of it seems to connect for me. So it's funny that you say, like, do I coach around money? Because I do. It's interesting because a lot of people aren't yet ready for how I talk about, believe, and act with money now. And so my retreats have a lot to do with valuing and worthiness within yourself. And so money inevitably comes up. And I share with people, and I'm probably also much more of a risk taker. I never used to really be this much of a risk taker, but there are moments in these last 3 years where I haven't known how my bills are going to be paid the next month. There's probably at least 8 or 9 months out of these last 3 years where that has happened, and something has come up. Some miracle has happened. Something always happens. And so I believe truly now that money is an energy, and it's not this thing we can look at dollar bills in our hands, but it's truly an energetic exchange. And the more you lean into that, the more you begin to realize the power that you have within to create. And so I keep being led to talk more about money and work with people on it. So I believe that's probably going to be a part of my journey for sure.
This is another sign for you then. And I know it drives people nuts, like the energetic exchange conversation. They think it's kind of fluffy when I'm coming up with pricing for things. There's certain things that I do that are more, there's some set pricing and a scale around things, but it does come down to an energetic exchange as well. I'm not going to, let's say somebody wanted to have a scope of work who is a small business versus if Nordstrom called me back and was like, hey, we want you to work on this thing, what I'm charging them is going to be completely different to what I'm charging a small business for multiple reasons, not least of which is the bureaucracy, which you mentioned before, and dealing with bullshit. I I add meetings as line items because they're
Yeah,
energy suckers. You do not get
absolutely.
meetings, and I don't choose to work with people. And I sit with one of the things that I know with my human design too, which sucks for you. I wonder how that, like the whole moon cycle, I
Oh
only need
yeah.
24 hours to make my decisions. You have to
Yeah.
use a whole moon cycle or you're encouraged to.
Yeah.
But with me, I'm like, okay, I feel like this is a good number and I'm going to feel into that. And then I'm going to send the proposal or whatever. But I actually,
Hmm.
now that I have women who are more fierce about their numbers, I
Hmm.
actually had an instance last week where I was going to present a $1,500 scope for a project. And then a female friend was like, up that to 18. And then I was irritated that they immediately accepted. But like, certain things I can't be like $5,000 for this when, that energy exchange doesn't make any sense for
Hmm.
the type of project that it was. But I was
Hmm.
glad in that instance it was a woman who encouraged me to up my
Yeah.
rate for something.
Yeah. I love that. So I think now that you say that too, talking because I talk so openly about money, I've definitely had people that have come to coach with me because of that. And I'll say like, let's look at your numbers. Let's look at what are you actually charging, and especially in the holistic healing realm, which I keep stepping more into, there are a lot of healers who vastly undercharge
Yeah.
and undervalue their work and undervalue their time and their energy. And I think it's part of my purpose to help change that, because the way we value things in this world just does not make sense right now. It's not working. And in my mind, I see healers on the same level as doctors and nurses and people who deliver a different type of Western medicine. And so it's been interesting to come up against this more and more. Like, the transparency is so needed. So I love that you're doing the Money Club idea. I think that's
Hmm.
fantastic, because there's no
And
shame either around it. Like,
no,
should not
but there
be.
is,
Hmm.
and that's other things too. Like I can't solve those things for them, and I can only encourage them or present
Hmm.
different ways of thinking or questioning your own stories, like you said too. And
Hmm.
the healer part is super interesting to me because they, it's one of those things that one of my mentors said, mentors meaning I read her book and took her course. But
Yeah.
I serve, so I deserve,
Mm.
having that kind of reminding yourself that what you're doing is a service and that deserves to be well compensated. One of the questions that when we have healers on this podcast in very like mediumship and things that other people previously have thought witchy and degraded, and I know you're dabbling in that world a little bit, and
Hmm.
these healers, they've been degraded so much over time that they don't value their time and energy. And I ask them, when the energy exchange isn't equal, what does that do to you? Does it make you
Yeah.
sick? Because a lot of them, they get sick if they're not
Yes.
charging the right amount. And
Yeah.
that's a huge sign, regardless of whether you're a intuitive or medium or light
Hmm.
worker or just a
Hmm.
person who writes things. I write things but very soulful, and it takes a lot of me in them too.
Oh
So
yeah.
I have been increasing my rates for years. I mean, I'm a
Oh yeah.
staff
And even for
too.
people who don't have their own business, who are just living their regular everyday life, whatever you might do, let's say you're a parent full time, like when it's out of balance, if you're willing to look at yourself and look at what's happening to your body, there are messages you're getting all the time of how you're
Mm-hmm.
not receiving enough and you're over giving. And so it's been interesting too, playing with all of these different things in balance, with money, with my time, because I used to be an overgiver as well. Now I don't say yes to anything unless it really feels like exciting and it feels fun and it feels like it's right for me. And that means saying no to mostly everything else, which might be even a lunch date with somebody or a coffee time with someone or whatever it might be. But I have gotten to such a very much zero tolerance policy about it, because I recognize that my energy is so precious and so limited that the more I say no as well, the clearer my path becomes, which is really exciting to me.
Yeah, you'll appreciate that. I have a friend who is very much on that path as well of your highest, the thing that you need to focus on first is protecting your energy all day, every day. That's what you have to give. And there was an acquaintance who kept bugging her via her virtual assistant to have coffee.
Oh.
And this is one of the people that I walk with. And one of the days we had to cancel because of rain. So we went to a coffee shop and she had said, hey, this is just not something that is my priority right now, or however she phrased it. And then we were sitting having coffee and that person walked in right after she, like the day before, had said, no, I'm not doing this. And we didn't feel bad, because
Yeah.
she's saying no to coffee with you, not no to coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
say yes to every coffee date, because especially
Mm-hmm.
in probably your world, my world, a lot of that is brain picking, and that costs
Oh,
money.
yeah. Yeah. And people just want to be in your energy too. And I'm tired of people wanting to be in my energy and not give anything as well. Like it's got to be reciprocal. And so I recognized that in my past previous jobs, people were coming and sitting in my office because it would help them. They would feel better when they left, and that's
Yeah.
fantastic. But when you suck everything out of me and I've got nothing left, like that's not how it's supposed to work. And so it also helps. I recognize too, and this helped me as an empath to move past this, was when I close the door on someone, even though it might feel like it's going to hurt them, it actually helps them. The people that I've walked away from, I've heard later on from some of those people that it is what prompted them to get counseling. Sometimes it is what's prompted them to move further in their journey when they recognize that something needs to change. And so I think oftentimes when people refuse to walk away from some relationships or friendships or whatever it might be, they're actually doing more harm than they are good, even though it feels icky. But
So I do have
yeah.
one thing that I'm very excited for you to respond to. I was on your website last week
Okay.
and you didn't tell me what the new retreat is. You told me about
What the new retreat?
the last retreat. I learned about that in Sedona, but I didn't learn anything about the details for the upcoming one. So do you have any insider information that you can give our audience on like your next retreat? Is it going to be in Sedona? What are we going
Good
to
question. I've
experience?
actually been waiting on Spirit to kind of tell me when the next one is supposed to be. And so I feel so this two of the retreats I have now, one's called BU, and which is a retreat for leaders in general, and that really focuses on they're very similar, because even though I was doing this real estate admin retreat, it was always about the essence of who I was. And so Unscripted is the other retreat though, and that's really like next level, definitely spiritual and personal growth. And so those are the ones that I get most excited about because it's really all of me. And so that's probably what would be up next, is another unscripted retreat. And the cool thing about that is each one is so different depending on who comes, who the attendees are, and then who I decide to partner with if I bring in a vendor partner or another healer or something like that. So I feel like I want to go back to Sedona again. And I think it will probably be sometime in the next 6 months or so. And so if people want to hear and kind of be the first to hear about upcoming retreats, the best way to do that is to sign up for my newsletter on my website, because I email people first to give them a chance to sign up. Uh, yeah, it's interesting to see the evolution of these. The last retreat I had right before COVID, it sold out in 48 hours. And so that was a sign to me that, like, okay, I'm doing the right thing here. So it's been interesting to watch that unfold.
Yeah, and it's been on my list of something I'm manifesting of going on the right retreat for me, because I've never been on a
Okay.
business retreat.
Okay.
And a lot of the ones that come up, they're a little too communal living for me, in the
Mhm.
sense of me being in a dorm. So I'm being healed. And this is no feedback for you. I don't know
Yeah.
what you've done
Yeah.
previously or the types of accommodations that you've had. I want something.
Mhm.
So when you're creating something for me, make it kind of bougie, because
Okay.
I want my own bathroom. I don't
Mhm.
want it to be like bunk beds and a bathroom down the hall as one of the
Mhm.
options. It's also
Mhm.
a test for me of how willing are you to invest in yourself when there's multiple options at multiple price
Mhm.
points to make it accessible for people. I
Yep.
totally support that. However, I don't want them all to be in these big drafty cold houses with a bathroom down the
Mhm.
hall. I want
Mhm.
everyone to be kind of bougie.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get it. The last retreat that I did in Sedona was definitely at this gorgeous semi-bougie house, I would say. And it's not semi-bougie. It was beautiful. It's a retreat center, but it's more like a really nice luxury VRBO.
Okay.
And so not everybody had their own room. Some people had to share, but it was just with one person. And then they would have their own bathroom, and it's like a gorgeous bathroom. And so there's something to be said about that. some of the retreats I've had in the past, there were like 5 people to a bedroom, and they were all a bunch of introverts that came. So part of the challenge and the growth there too was actually talking to the people around you. So it
Mhm.
depends on what experience that you want. But I'm definitely a big believer, and I think people know this about me too, that my first and foremost top concern is everyone's comfort and feeling safe. Because if people don't feel safe, I always go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If safety is at the bottom of that, and if they don't feel safe physically, mentally, emotionally, then they won't explore any of these other layers of the triangle, which includes, having an expansive mind and being curious. And so I always make sure that there's good food, there's comfort in their environment, and that I've done everything humanly possible to help them feel safe. And so that's definitely been my top concern. But I like hearing that from you. It's good.
Yeah. The thing for me too, and if you had asked me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it would have been probably different because I was more open to being in community with other women in a
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to pay extra for my own room way. And now I'm like, if I'm going away from my kids and I'm
Mm-hmm.
so touched out and wanting to
Yes.
be in my own space and energy for this healing to actualize on that, if I knew somebody was in my room who was at that same level as me, even if I didn't
Yeah.
know them, that would be okay. But overall, for me, I right now need to be alone if
Yeah.
I'm going to be away from my kids.
Yeah. I totally get that. And I've heard that expressed from people before as well, like having this opportunity to step away from their everyday life and really take a moment to be with themselves, then having that alone time is really necessary.
For sure.
Yeah.
And don't worry, nobody could hear this, but what I had to be on mute for a second to tell my child that I'm going to wipe her butt in about 5 minutes. And that's what it means. Or tell her brother to relay to her that I will be there to wipe her poop in a few minutes, because that's what it's like to be home and recording. So,
Yes, I totally get it.
I'm
I
sure
love
the
it.
listener did not hear that, but it is a great place to start asking some rapid fires.
Okay.
I don't know if you've studied our previous episodes to
I've heard
know
a couple
them.
of them.
Okay, they're the
I don't
things
think I
that,
don't remember the questions though.
oh,
No.
good, because the
Mm.
things that they reveal are just so cool for us. What are you proudest of in your business right now?
Oh, I think my ability and determination to follow my heart and stick with it, not give up on my heart, and which is completely opposite of what business is supposed to look like or
Yep.
be. Hmm.
And allow that to guide you too, because I don't know about you, but I've
Hmm.
had a lot of not what are they going to think, but even like my LinkedIn looks so crazy. That's why I love my business, because I do all these things and I pivot all the time, but it looks
Yeah.
consistent. And for a long
Yeah.
time, that mattered to me. Like, I look
Hmm.
loyal. I've done the same thing,
Yeah.
quote unquote, for 6 years. No, I have not. But the umbrella under which my business is on LinkedIn makes the LinkedIners, because I'm not a LinkedIn person, think, oh,
Me neither.
she's been consistent. Look at her. She's loyal to herself.
Yes.
That's what
I
that
love
is.
that.
Tell us about a book you read or a podcast you listened to recently that changed the way you're thinking about your life or your business.
Hmm. A book I read or a podcast I listened to. The one that comes to mind is Conscious Look by Gay Henriksen. And he wrote The Big Leap. And that was a really cool instrumental book in a membership that I'm a part of that I lead. But conscious luck is another way of looking at manifestation and another way of looking at how your mindset plays into manifestation. And I love the way he approaches it because I'm a big believer in being able to. I think part of my job here on earth is to say things in such a way that it reaches a group of people that couldn't be reached otherwise. And so I feel like Gay Henriksen does a really good job of being a bridge for people who might not believe in manifestation, but they have heard luck and they believe in that.
Yeah, so I'm in actually a manifestation group, and I love that way of thinking. And I have told this story before too, of where when I was in high school, I started on my own journey of all of this, of really knowing that it's a thing, not just a
Mm-hmm.
sense that I had, but a thing that people do.
Mm-hmm.
When my mom made me buy her The Secret and then the DVD for Christmas that year. And I just watched the DVD with her a couple times. I'm like 16 years old, really thinking about
Wow.
I need to make room in my bed for my partner sort of thing. I just remember that very specific example and how all of those things are true. And just like that was a bridge as well. And now I need to get those books because I've heard of the one that you're not reading.
The Big Leap.
The Big Leap.
It's excellent.
But the other one I really need to get too, because that's the kind of thing that just really fills me up. And I always get new nuggets out of them as well, which is.
Oh yeah. Have you ever tracked your manifestations? I love tracking the things that have happened, to share with people because they're unexplainable and they're my favorite kind of stories to share. Yeah.
I actually was reading a Deepak Chopra book. I'm probably butchering his name right now, but he has a million books, and this one is Quantum Healing. And he was talking about there's a lot of things that people can do with their minds to heal themselves. And Louise Hay is a big person in that field as well. And Deepak had this like crazy line in there about drugs, and that's a whole other conversation that we can have another time, but how even for doctors, it's easier to prescribe the chemical they're used to than introduce somebody to a new idea. And I was like, holy shit, that's so true. Oh my God. Like I hadn't thought about it from their perspective in that way of what are you going to do? Have a conversation of you could use your mind to heal your body. They're just like, give me the drug. I know a lot of doctors who actually deal with that a lot, but even for the doctor of evaluating this person in front of them and how they're going to approach the conversation and the healing conversation along with all these other variables that they have with them. And that's just it's another level and thought behind manifestation and how powerful we really are in controlling our whole lives. I worked on Xbox when we launched Connect, which was the hand-free system for video gaming. And at E3, which is the big gaming convention every year, we had t-shirts that said, you know how you get those convention t-shirts that are too big and everyone gets them.
I always talk about how I hate those shirts.
It says you are the controller. I've had that shirt since I think 2009, 2010, because it resonated with me in such a bigger way too, that whenever I felt bad or I needed to really amp myself up, I would sleep in that shirt. I think I just slept in it last week because I'm just like, hell yeah, like I'm the controller. I'm in charge. It doesn't matter if it has to do with a video game. It's a perfect sleep shirt because it has an affirmation in the mirror.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
What would your last meal be?
Oh, last meal ever. It would probably be Tom's fried chicken. It's the most ridiculously delicious fried chicken I've ever had in my life.
Does he use pickle juice?
No. I'll have to tell him about that.
That's a whole other level. So one of the jobs, the many lifetimes I've had, like Barbie, who apparently has had 135 careers, the way that I talk about it almost seems like I've had about that many as well, which is fine. One of the jobs that I had, I was a social media manager for a cooking company that's based in Pike Place Market. And one of the things that they do is they R&D the shit out of every single thing that even for me, things that I already knew I loved, they made me love them more. Things I didn't think I liked, they made me love, like chocolate cake. I never thought I liked it. Lamb, I didn't think I liked that either. Fried chicken, I knew I liked, but they did a lot of testing around adding pickle juice to the brine.
Okay. All right.
So they have it on their website, probably chefsteps.com, like perfect. It's always like perfect fried chicken, but I'm sure there's plenty of recipes that have used pickle juice.
Okay.
And it also helps the batter stick as well.
Okay.
Or you could just shoot it like a pickleback. What's the best business purchase you've made in the last 6 months under $100?
Oh, the best business purchase I've made. Gosh. I would probably have to say a reading from one of my fellow psychics. Yeah. I mean, if there's anything that I could invest in on a regular basis, it's coaching for myself and readings with different mediums and psychics because it adds so much value, so much new perspective. It's very expansive. It's my favorite thing to be able to do for myself. Yeah.
Hell yeah. When we walked into that room, I kind of didn't know what to expect at that. Emily and I were at a healing event that you were at a couple weeks ago with 4 healers. And we were surprised that we were so excited by Stas because she really came in and just kind of similar to how my dad is, like she would add value to
Mhm.
say one thing that really cemented something that somebody else said, or drive something home, or let somebody know that how seen they were. And
Mhm.
so we were just like, we got to get a reading with her immediately. And then Emily did, like last week on
Oh,
Monday, got
cool.
a reading with Stas, but she's just starting out, I think, at least in having her
Yeah.
business. And so we were excited to support her in that way as well. I mean,
Oh,
we were
cool.
familiar with the rest of you, but we didn't know Stas at all.
Yeah, she's awesome. I love that.
And I love too that in that world too, everybody's owning more, that they
Mhm.
have multiple things that they help with, like Amanda in our previous episode of multidimensional healings. You can't really explain it. You have to be there with that person and really
Yes.
feel it with them.
Yeah. And then I think once you feel it, even if you don't know anything about the spiritual world, you understand it more just by
Mm-hmm.
feeling that energy and the presence. And yeah, it's amazing.
I love that you said that too, because sometimes I wonder if I get too many readings, would that muddy my own intuition? Would that
Mhm.
take me away from myself? And I think you can externalize your spirituality or over
Mhm.
intellectualize it too much,
Mhm.
but that's just really checking in with yourself too. And for somebody like
Oh
you,
yeah.
it's
I
not.
have had to get in the past, I had to give myself permission because I needed that validation. And at one point, even that was validated by, so my mentor, who's also a medium and psychic, NMA Mangles, is by far the person I go to all the time. And at one point I said, why do I just yearn for this so much? Is there something wrong with me? Because I get so excited about hearing from people who have passed on the other side that I know my mediumship abilities are just beginning to wake up, but I don't think that's it. And she said, you don't get as much external validation as you could probably use on this side. You get a lot of that from people who have passed over. And it just was, I immediately started to cry because I recognized, oh yeah, like I get so much from my grandmother, my mom's mom, who I was named after. She has said so many different things that have given me the confidence to step into what I'm doing today. To the point of even saying about the house that I'm in now is a duplex that I renovated myself. And at the beginning of COVID, when I was starting my business, she said through Enmei, because she knew I was thinking about selling my house, she's like, if you want to sell your house, if that would give you more peace, go ahead and do it, but you don't have to. And because of that, I'm like, I've always been like, all right, I'm not going to have to sell my house. She told me I can stay. And it's amazing when you allow yourself to accept that validation and really it helps to build your confidence in ways that nobody from the living world has ever given me as much validation as that.
Yeah. I can't
Mm-hmm.
wait to explore that with you and learn more about it, because of course I'm always like trying to connect with my dad and
Oh yeah.
just obsessing over Tyler Henry and all the cute guy in New Jersey that my mom reads him and she got us on one of those hot seat meetings with him
Oh
before too. I
wow.
can't remember his name, but he's really cute and just had a baby. Very
Oh yeah.
Jersey.
I know who you're
Very
talking
Jersey.
about. Yes, yes.
The last question, what's lighting you up lately?
What is lighting me up the most is really fully stepping into my spiritual self and allowing that to shine through more in my business, because I'm a really big believer in transparency and authenticity. And if I'm not sharing that part of myself with my podcast audience or with the people that I encounter, then they're not actually getting all of me. And to really truly be my best self and the best coach I can be and the best just advocate and leader I can be, all of me needs to be present. And so really stepping into that and feeling it and embracing it has been super exciting and just brings me so much joy.
Yeah, I love that for you. And I love that you said that, because a lot of people are so afraid to be their whole selves. And that's part of
Mhm.
what I push people to do in different ways too, of you are better, you serve better if you can show up
Yes.
fully. And what does that look like on the words on your website, how you write your Instagram
Mhm.
bio, like it all kind of comes together. And then also
Mhm.
just constantly pestering them to be like, have you done this? And backing off when I need to. But I do believe like my job is to herd the cats a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And I love that for you, because it is, I don't like how reductive it sounds to say brave, but it is, because so many
Mhm.
people aren't willing to show up fully because they're afraid of
Mhm.
so many different things. And it really
Yeah.
shows how much work you've done to get there and show up so fully for everybody else.
Oh, thanks.
And lastly, where can everyone find you?
One of the easiest places to find me is on Instagram. I'm there quite often, and my handle is the_Margaret_Smith, or I Love It When LLC. And then my website's iloveitwhen.org. And yeah, please reach out. I love connecting with people.
Or running into at the University Village Starbucks, even though neither of us ever go to University Village.
Yes.
I was
Super
there
random.
again last night. I was like, why am I here so much lately? And like, do I like it? Do I not? It was great to be there by myself, but generally too much energy.
It's a very busy place. Lots of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time for this and for listening to my children in the background at times.
Totally.
And
thank you for having me.
We appreciate you so much. And we'll be sharing more and more of what you're doing on your journey, where we, meaning I, have been more active on our Instagram. So we'll have more to share as you share with us. And I expect some Sedona little previews on Instagram. I think I'm on your email list as well, because I was like, I need to figure out what Mo's doing and where her next retreat is, because that's on my list of things that I'm actively manifesting.
I love that.
For what it's
a magical
worth.
Experience.
And not to push you, but for what it's worth, I'm also manifesting being on some kind of panel at a retreat, like adding value, but not necessarily. I'm willing to pay for retreats as well. And I don't know like how that works and if people who are invited also pay, but I'm willing to pay and I'm willing to be invited to somebody else's retreat. I would rather pay for yours and then be invited on somebody else's panel, so that
I'll keep that in mind too.
If we're, let's say, if we're working on their websites for business owners, that's kind of how I envision it, of bringing in those kinds of experts to help them really show up better online. So if anybody's working on a retreat where you need somebody to help you write your website at the same time and get that shit done, then I'm your girl. And then I'll be growing at Mo's retreat.
Okay, I love it.
Yay. In my bougie room without my kids.
In your bougie room, yes.
Well, thank you, Mo, and everyone, thank you for listening. We will be back next week with another wonderful, ambitious, amazing woman who is not my daughter screaming from the toilet right now. See ya.